picture is worth 1,000 words. We've all heard it, and you're probably rolling your eyes at me using such a cliche to start out a presentation on visual supporting materials. But it really is the most apt phrase that I can use to describe the important role that images and graphics play in giving an effective presentation. Properly incorporating them can increase audience understanding, retention, and overall interest. But using them involves more than just slapping a picture on the screen and calling it good. The important thing to remember when using visual aids is that they are supplementary. A presentation still needs to be grounded in what the speaker has to say. Throughout the course of this presentation, I will be discussing the benefits of using visual aids, some of the different types and how they are used, and tips on how to avoid the all-too-common death by PowerPoint. Visual aids enhance speaker effectiveness by supplementing the information that they are speaking. They can help improve memory, speed up comprehension, add interest, and increase credibility. Studies have found that audiences only remember 10 to 25% of what they hear in a presentation, and that information is remembered inaccurately. However, when pictures and graphics are added to highlight important points, that learning is doubled. Visual aids help people to understand complex and technical information quickly, and this can be explained by looking at left brain, right brain science. The left side of your brain deals with details and analytical information, whereas the right side focuses on the big picture with no details. And visual aids help to connect these two. Now, this increase in comprehension is further aided by the fact that your picture memory is near perfect. So in this way, visual aids serve as anchors for important information. You think about the picture and suddenly you remember the words that go with it. Audiences are able to overcome doubts for a new speaker or a relatively inexperienced speaker when they use visual aids. Also, studies have found that the average presenter can be seen as just as effective as an expert when they use them. By adding emphasis, visual aids can increase interest and make a presentation more engaging for an audience. They also help to hold interest for routine or boring presentations and topics. And finally, visual aids help to save time because they can convey complex technical information quickly. Think about when last time you tried to give someone directions for how to get somewhere. You had to explain street names and landmarks and left, right turn, this is where you park, all these things. Kind of like if any of you had me try to explain how to get into this apartment and park before. It's confusing. Whereas if you just pull up a map, you can point at streets and maybe even draw arrows, and suddenly have all that information very quickly right in front of them, and they can also look back at it later. So that's a great way to use visual aids. Now we're going to talk about some of the different types of visual aids that can be used. To begin with, we have graphs. Now graphs illustrate and compare numeric data. They are very common because they are so versatile and they're very effective as well. So different types. We have line graphs, which show the relationship between numeric concepts. So you can see as one value changes, it shows how the other one responds. Like in this one, where we talk about my impulses and how anytime I have more free time, I have more desire to get a fish tank. It's a problem. Ashley probably understands, she can say. Next we have fever graphs. Now they show changes in value over a certain period of time. You can quickly see trends and also slight changes in data, like this one showing my emotional eating over college and how that started out kind of okay and now it's just skyrocketing because fifth year, woo, that's how it goes. Bar graphs, they show values of data and they're good for comparison. Like this one, the number of times I go to Taco Bell in a normal week versus exam week. I think we're starting to see a trend with these graphs and Phil and things you're learning or maybe not learning. You know. Finally, we've got pie graphs. Now they show percentages or proportions, and they're good for identifying inefficiencies or wastes of time or resources, like this one, where you can clearly see when I'm writing a paper, I'm wasting some time just complaining and saying, I don't want to do this, or rewarding myself for small achievements by eating Taco Bell and watching Netflix, whereas I should probably be spending more time writing or doing research. Pie graphs, everyone. Next we have charts. Now charts show different relationships between different parts of a group. So, or they can also show sequences of events. So you think like an organizational hierarchy, if you've seen those charts, you see how different departments are related and connected and who has the power and all of that flow of information. And then you also have like flow charts, which show like processes, and you can see step by step, and you're like, oh, this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And we've got tables. Now, they arrange large amounts of data in rows and columns for easy comparison. They need to be in a large format, and it's best to have it like a handout or something so people can read it and take time to study it, because on a PowerPoint, it just ends up looking very cluttered, and maybe there's too much information still for people to process during a speech. Now we have visual representations. Some examples of these are photographs or maps, or drawings. Now these, to remember, these need to be high quality, and they should also be large enough for the entire audience to see. You can't have just a little thumbnail on the screen where everyone's going to be squinting and not looking at you or paying attention to anything you're saying. Also, they should not be distracting. They should be something that is relevant to your topic. You just can't slap a random clip art stock photo on the screen and talk about something completely different, because that makes no sense. This also should be hidden when not in use, because out of sight, out of mind, people need to be focusing on you and not all of those things. Good example, once again, is a map, like I talked about earlier. I may have posted one of these on Facebook to explain how to get to my apartment. You can see where to go, and all of that fun stuff. Maps are a very good example of a visual representation. So now we've got physical representations. These are things like objects or models or scaled models, things like that. They engage other senses more so than just a 2D picture would. They also can add a little more interest. But once again, they need to be relevant, and they should be large enough. You don't want to be passing a small object around the room, because then no one's paying attention to you. They're just looking at that object, and if they don't have it, they're like, oh, when am I going to get it next? And no one's paying attention to you, and that's what should be happening during the presentation. Also, out of sight, out of mind, once again. Don't just have this random object sitting on the table the entire speech, where people are just going to be looking at that. Now, animated images, they're good for showing processes, and they can be easily integrated into a PowerPoint slide, like this one on the wonderful way that I usually parallel park. Yeah, once again, trends. Now we've got interactive engagement. These are hands-on experiences for when a picture or a model just doesn't quite do the topic justice. Maybe it's something that's learned best by doing. So, like how to fold a paper airplane. This is going to be a great one. I'm going to pass some paper around. Everyone take one, pass it around. Put some over here too.
Oh, I'm good.
All right. Everyone got one. That has hands to use one. All right. So we're going to start out like you would with any. Have it holding up like that, portrait style. And you fold it in half, hot dog style. Like that. Much like any paper airplane you start. Alright. Then you're going to take the top two corners and fold them down to the center line. Once again, fairly common step. Where things get a little different. You're going to take that triangle and you're going to fold it down, so you've got like about a thumb width space from the bottom.
Folds on the inside, right?
Yep, folds are on the inside. Then, once you got that all creased and good, you're going to take those top two corners and fold them down. Yep, down to the middle, like you did on the first step, second step. You got that nice and creased. You'll see this little triangle flap at the bottom. You're going to take that and you're just going to fold it up.
Super.
So then you're going to take that and you're going to fold it in half again so you've got like the flaps on the outside. There we go, yeah, that.
That's why the first steps are important.
So then you're going to fold down the wings like so. Fold it so it's like a flat edge. So you're going to take it, you're going to fold it down like that. There we go.
Oh, I see.
Alright, you're going to get it nice and creased. And yep, you're going to try it. See? That's how it works.
You're gonna hit your camera person with your paper airplane.
There we go. There, fun. Interactive engagement. Ooh, you all did great.
Oh my gosh.
See, it's a good one.
The poor
Now, this
fish.
next form of visual supplementing material, I'm going to say with absolute certainty that every person in this room has seen at least once. How can I be so certain? Because it's digital slides or a PowerPoint, like this one. Now, these are really good because they help the speaker and the audience to focus in on main ideas. They can also really good to easily incorporate other forms of visual aids like pictures and graphics like I've been doing this whole time. They also organize things for both the speaker and the audience, you know, kind of where you're at, where you're speaking, and they serve really great for a speaker because they're a nice source of notes for you as well. Now, the thing is, there are rules for using PowerPoint. I'm sure you have all seen bad PowerPoints, maybe at school or something, where you just have, it doesn't make sense, and they're just looking at it and they're clicking through it all because it needs to be supplementary. It shouldn't just be someone clicking through slides and not saying anything. The presentation should still be you. So you gotta consider things like layouts and fonts and color schemes and content and all of that. So to begin with, we have colors and fonts. Now you need to choose a palette to start with. It should be nice, something that's consistent throughout the entire speech. And you want a nice subtle background with contrasting color for text so things show up. If you choose a color that's too close, it becomes invisible. You can't really read that, or you're going to be straining to read that. It's just hard to read and it's difficult. Also, you need to make sure that the font is at a correct size. You can't have teeny tiny font, otherwise people are just going to be squinting, not actually reading. Also, you're going to have all sorts of fun fonts to choose from with Word and all of that, so make sure you aren't picking things that are too elaborate or just weird or difficult to read. And also there are some that are just so out of the ordinary that you don't even know what they say, so just stay away from those, stick to the standard ones. It's a good idea. Now, PowerPoint has all sorts of animations and transitions preloaded into the software. You're going to be tempted to see these really fun ones that are all crazy, but you should probably stick to something subtle. It's nice and easy and professional looking, because otherwise these fun ones end up being just too slow, or they end up being super distracting. So stick to the basic ones once again. Now the layout of your slide, you want text to be aligned properly. You can't just have text pop up at random parts in the screen where people don't know where to focus or anything. So just align things to the left is a good idea, or under the title, and make sure things are well balanced. Beautiful slide. Here we go. Now content. Keep the text on the slides short. Overloading the page with too much text makes it difficult for the audience to read, and they end up ignoring you and just reading, which defeats the purpose of a presentation. You should also be speaking to the audience, not just reading from a slide. Avoid using full sentences, and stick to short bullet points covering main ideas and information you want to emphasize. In case you didn't notice, this is a bad example. Don't do this. Stick to bullet points. Alright, last but not least, you really need to prepare, because last thing you want to do is go to have a video to play and suddenly you see this little message. Make sure you preload things. Also, don't rely on internet because it's bad. It will not disconnect. It will maybe just not work, and suddenly your whole presentation will be derailed and you don't know what to do. So also make sure you practice lots of times with all of the elements, all the technical elements, so things don't just suddenly freeze up on you, or it just doesn't work the way you thought it was going to work, because it's going to derail your whole presentation and then it's just a distraction. Alright, also you need to have references. Make sure that you're citing all the information that you're using that's not yours, including pictures and graphics. And make sure you do it on the screen. So if you had seen earlier, sometimes there'd be little text that pop up next to the pictures that I had that was telling you, hey, this isn't mine, I borrowed it from somewhere else. Otherwise it's plagiarism. You can also do like a reference page. I just use that to cover myself so that this plagiarism is a bad thing. Alright, so in conclusion, at some point in life, everyone will have to get up in front of a group of people and give a presentation of some sort, whether it be for work, a special event, or even a public speaking class. Not every presentation calls for a full-blown PowerPoint or instructive demonstration, but finding small ways to incorporate visual aids into your speech can have numerous benefits. Hopefully this speech has given you a few ideas on how to do that. So I'll say it again. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And as cliche as that may be, a properly used visual aid can make the difference between a boring speech and an interactive presentation. Thank you.